The fight for trans rights and the right to choose an abortion are closely connected.
My pronouns are they, them. Would you like to share yours?
As a non-binary trans femme, it is affirming.
If you believe a man magically can become a woman because he utters a phrase, you have to be a pretty stupid and obtuse person. And so,
personally, I am down to dilate because I am sick and tired of my candy cane.
The fight for trans rights and the right to choose an abortion are closely connected. And many people don't realize it. After overturning abortion rights, conservatives are now attacking trans rights, specifically the ability for trans youth to access gender-affirming care. This is part of a bigger strategy to control other people's bodies and make decisions for them. And I don't think anybody should be forced to do that. Your body is your body. So we need to look at the broader picture, no matter what your opinions are about trans youth or just transgender people in general. And I hope cis women can see how you can go down this pipeline, a trans exclusionary radical feminist, which is a TERF. No, we're not going to include trans women because they don't face the same issues. If we don't protect trans rights, it sets the stage for restricting everyone's freedoms. The struggle for bodily anatomy, whether it's abortion or trans rights, should be seen as one fight. While many Democrats have focused on abortion, they've ignored the attacks on trans rights, missing the chance to unite the two. And are they doing that on purpose? I'm not going to say on this app.
She seems a lot lower energy in that video than usual, but thoughts?
there are no trans youth. There are only parents that are groomers and cults that try to groom children and confuse them. And I think the explosion of trans youth is actually just proof that there's a cult that's grooming kids. And also, you don't have trans kids. You have parents that have Munchausen syndrome by proxy. And they're using their kids with these fake issues because they get off to it. And then also, obviously, her talking about so-called TERFs. I mean, that is the height of hypocrisy, that you have men calling real women a slur. You have men mansplaining to women what a woman is. You have a man suing Sal Grover, a woman, and trying to lecture Sal Grover along with a male judge about what a woman is. It is the height of stupidity. It's insanely regressive. And that's where we're at these days. And a TERF, as I always say, is nothing more than a woman who knows about sex-based realities and differences. And if that makes someone a TERF, it also makes them a scientist.
And what do you have to say about this? You know, abortion rights are trans rights. You know, you can't, the two go hand in hand. You can't fight for one without the other.
Again, I think they're professionals at non sequiturs. I think the whole line of argumentation is idiotic. These people aren't the brightest. If you believe a man magically can become a woman because he utters a phrase, you have to be a pretty stupid and obtuse person. And so they tend to say the most stupid, asinine things. And this doesn't come as a shock to me that she said this. I don't see the correlation between the two, but maybe she sees something I don't. She also sees a man that has a penis and balls as a woman. So you never know what's going through their brains. I want everyone out there to keep in mind that only 4 to 13% of trans women have bottom surgery. That means 87 to 96% of trans women are walking around with a wiener and balls. And people like her think that they are women, and so that should show you how stupid they are.
Yeah, so I guess I'll just comment on this kind of conflation of the abortion and trans rights. This is something the left is good at doing, and well, I mean, not good from our lens because we see right through it, but to people who aren't very politically astute, when they say things like, you know, fat oppression and fat phobia is all due to racism, and they try and make this link that, you know, the reason people are fat phobic goes back to black people and because of the beauty standard, and it's all about racism. They do the same thing with this. Like they conflate the two things, or they say like you can't be a feminist and also not be for trans liberation, and then they have some bizarre reason why the two things go hand in hand. So I think that is something we're seeing across all leftist ideology, which is very, very toxic. And you know, it even goes down to identity based in terms of I'm gay, therefore people just cannot compute that I don't want massive state, you know, socialized healthcare, like all of that kind of stuff. Because I'm gay, I have to be not only socially liberal, progressive, but also economically liberal and progressive. And they're very good at kind of pinning people down into these things. And then just what you said, like, I think, yes, some of these people are stupid and it shines through. But I think what's important for us to remember, in my opinion, is, I see this as a cult. I think you do too. And even intelligent people can get, lured into cults. Some of the trans men that have funded some of these whole things, like billionaires, have made a massive career out of, being genius scientists. So I think no one's necessarily immune from being part of a cult, and that's why some people get, drawn into real cults.
Their logic is stupid, but they're very good and they're experts at gaslighting people. And you touched on something which I think is important. I think most sane people can see that they have convenient conclusions that they want, and they reverse engineer the logic in the most insane way, complete with backflips and these mental gymnastics that allows them to arrive at these convenient conclusions. And so they try to make these links, but they're always reverse engineering the logic to come to the conclusion that they want, instead of just objectively looking at things, following it, and then arriving at the conclusion that reality demands. They will never do that. And so I think that's why you see them doing these insane mental gymnastics.
Yeah, good point.
My pronouns are they, them. Would you like to share yours?
Sure. She, her.
So is it okay if I touch you?
Yeah.
My pronouns are they, them. Would you like to share yours?
Sure. Mine are she, hers.
Is it okay if I take it down?
Yes, please.
Okay, yeah.
I
Get in
think
here
it
and
would be
look.
hard not to.
Is it all right if I touch you and take down these little things up here?
Yeah, they're like really little elastics. I don't know if you want
Oh,
to
let's
cut
snip them out. Yep,
Mhm.
yep. My pronouns are she, they. If you wanted to share yours.
I mean, she, her, they, he. I don't really care.
Any, all, right?
Yep.
They kill me.
It's so insulting to think that people's essence and their identity is simply, how they choose to identify, or simply their orientation. I have two gay uncles, and the last thing they would do to define themselves or identify themselves is say, I'm a gay man. That's the last thing. That's not instructive on anything for them, because it doesn't say anything about them. And so I just think it's so patronizing. It's so insulting when people think that how we want to introduce ourselves or define ourselves has to do with the body we were born in or who we want to have sex with. And so stuff like that is just nauseating for me to watch, and I think super healthy.
I think so much is summed up in those videos because, well, first of all, I think it's so funny that the hairdresser in two of them is they, them, and then in another one is she, they. It's like these things just change day by day.
It's the science, though. The science says she can do that because the current science is self-ID, which has been codified in over 21 states to be the law of those states. And that should scare people that is the current science. The science is very convenient, isn't it? You can just identify however you want at any given time, which makes what she's doing all the more stupid, because it doesn't matter if her client says that they're she, her, the next day they could be he, him. The whole thing is stupid.
Yeah, and I do, if you notice with the last one, she was like, he, she, whatever. I think something with pronouns and gender fluid and non-binary is they have this kind of superiority complex where they think, I'm so in tune with myself and I'm so released from this shackle of the heteronormative society that you can call me any pronoun you want, because like I'm not part of gender, I've been liberated from that. And that's really something I see.
There's a lot of contradictory behavior, including, they say gender is a social construct and it's arbitrary and it's basically meaningless. But they also define themselves as transgender, the root of which is gender. But they say transgender is real, but they say the root word gender is just a social construct. How is transgender real if they're also arguing that half of the word gender is just a made-up social construct? So again, when you actually analyze it and look at it, none of it makes sense. None of it's logical. They just want to justify how they feel and what they're going through with in some convenient way. And so they arrive at this thing that, oh, well, I'm transgender and I have this special identity that makes me fall into 3 victim classes. And now instead of being a, straight man, cis man, I'm a trans woman. That, I think people are lacking a purpose and meaning in their life. And that's why this cult is so appealing, because it allows people to belong to a community. It allows them to belong to multiple victim classes, and it allows them to feel special. And I think that's why hundreds of thousands of people are malingering. They're faking it, and they're all doing it because they just want to feel important and they want to feel like they belong somewhere. And I think it's really sad. And we need to find a better hobby for people, especially our kids. And I think a hobby of hacking off your body parts is probably the wrong hobby to have if you're 6 years old.
Mm. And with this thing of can I touch you, I feel like we go from a society that doesn't believe a woman if she was raped, to then talking about, okay, let's talk about consent, like this is something that we don't discuss enough, to now it's these people think, oh, I'm going to show off my virtue, and as a hairdresser in which I have a job that can only be carried out by touching someone, I'm going to say this. And I just wonder, kind of as a man who, I think you're attracted to women, I don't know actually your sexuality, but I don't really have this issue as much as a gay man, but this overcorrection we've gone to, so that any sort of approach at all to someone can be seen as like,
well, they take things to the extreme. Going back to when we were talking about the train has kind of gone off the tracks with the woke mob. They tend to start off with a great idea, which is, hey, is bad. Hey, sexual assault's terrible. People should have to get their consent, to then this extreme. They're just always falling off the train tracks. And it's interesting that the left, which has been all about consent, because of the trans movement, they're constantly trampling the consent of women. There are many women who don't feel comfortable in the same spaces as biological men, and they're completely disregarding it. So it's just so interesting that they hold themselves up as these purveyors and people that want to put consent on a pedestal, while at the same time they're trampling over women's consent, and women are screaming like Riley Gaines, J.K. Rowling, Sal Grover, we don't consent to this. And the woke mob's saying, shut up, we don't care what you have to say. And it's like, I thought you were all about consent. I thought you were all about getting women's consent. You don't seem to care about it now because you're letting men invade their spaces. So they're, again, as usual, total hypocrite.
Yeah, I think trans activists are the most misogynistic people.
The truly wonderful thing about turning on Apple's Genmoji is like, look, she's looking for me and she feels I look this way, which, yeah, kind of. She feels I look this way, which I do as well. And this moment over here, I've also had. As a non-binary trans femme, it is affirming to pick out your Genmoji from the many menus of the many choices on the menu of life. I hope you're surrounded by chosen family and that everyone is affirming you today.
The fact that the trans movement is mad at me for allegedly making a mockery of them, and they're not mad at Jeffrey Marsh, and they're not mad at Lily Tino, and they're not mad at Dylan Mulvaney, shows you how utterly stupid they are. There's no difference between any of us. We're all men that were grifting. We're all men that were cosplaying. We're all men that are wearing costumes. And the fact that they're only mad at me and not these people, and that somehow these people are valid and I wasn't, it's a total joke. The whole thing is a sham, and it just shows how dangerous it is that anyone can self-identify into this, and it should scare people that that's the current world we live in.
Do you think Jeffrey Marsh gives off predatory behavior?
The fact that he makes videos talking to kids, telling them they should cut off their parents, and trying to give them advice. Again, people need to wake up. This is the world we live in, and the far left loves that guy, and the far left thinks he should be talking to your kids about them potentially being trans. Off.
Something we've had here in the UK is like this massive scandal because police did not want to report Pakistani Muslim men because they didn't want to be seen as racist. So I think we're in a dangerous territory right now with queer in terms of, oh, well, this man can read to my child in basically looking like a stripper because he's a minority. And this Jeffrey Marsh guy should be allowed to have this platform without all parents, saying something about it and saying like this man should not be talking to children because he's a gay person or because he's a non-binary trans femme or whatever. So I'm worried. I mean, I'm worried for me as well in terms of acceptance of gay people. If we see this being exploited more and more and more, like what's going to happen to how people view us?
Well, I think it's already gotten past that point. Now, as you're aware, there's this huge movement to separate the T's from the LGBs because many people in the community feel like the T's have completely discredited the LGB movement and they're kind of parasitic and have just attached themselves to a once noble movement and now made it a mockery and the laughing stock of the world. And they're making all gays and bisexuals and lesbians look terrible. And that's not good because I think most LGBs don't agree with this nonsense and they're pretty level-headed. So.
Okay, Josh, last one. You'll probably be happy to know.
I got my cake pops removed, but now it's time to turn my candy cane into a donut. After the procedure is done, I will stay in the hospital for about a week. And while I'm there, they will pack my freshly made donut with napkins. This will ensure that everything sets in place and the donut doesn't close in on itself. After about a week, they will remove the napkin and send me home with instructions to dilate. Dilating serves the same purpose as the napkin, making sure that the donut doesn't close in on itself. Just instead of using the napkins, you use a plastic candy cane or dilator that you place inside of the donut for 20 minutes 3 times a day. And as you heal, your donut will become more resilient and you will increase the size of your dilator until eventually you're ready for the big leagues and you only have to dilate a couple times a week. That being said, a lot of people don't want to dilate. It's understandable. The good news is that you can get a zero-depth donut, one that looks the exact same but doesn't require dilation. There are certain things that you can't do with a zero-depth donut, but that trade-off is worth it to some people. Personally, I am down to dilate because I am sick and tired of my candy cane, and I'm going into 2026 with a donut.
These people think because they go through all of this, they magically become a woman. You're still just a dude who hacked it off. And, it's now evidence has come out that when these men have these procedures, they basically have a huge hole with a bacterial infection and it smells like feces. That's how the medical community is describing it. And in a fairly decent percentage of these trans women, they have a hole right there between their legs that just smells like feces for the rest of their life.
Yeah, I have heard that many people do not get good outcomes and, even the suicidality rate doesn't decrease. But I think what's so disturbing with how he does this is making it about food and making it all kind of cutesy and making it seem like this kind of walk in the park, this kind of thing that people can flippantly decide on. And I find that so disturbing. But also, I don't know if you saw on X, there was a post of his that went viral that someone reposted, and he has an OnlyFans, I didn't know. But in that video, he seemed perfectly happy with his candy cane. He seemed not dysphoric about it at all, actually. And that is what is so creepy, because I don't really think he has a problem with it. I just think he finds the idea of having a vagina so alluring that it's still propelling him to remove it. And I'm sorry I've been so graphic, but I just think the whole thing just makes zero sense and it's quite disturbing.
For the love of God, stop teaching our children about this. In America, and I think the rest of the world has had enough, and I think that's why Donald Trump got elected. And I think there's a lot of pushback against this whole thing, and I hope that the tide kind of turns in the coming years and decades, and that this stuff is seen for what it is, which is just men's. That's all it is.